Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. As people start to roll in, I'll get us started. Welcome to the Community Opportunity Alliance's Economic Development Peer Learning Network convening, our last one of 2025. We've had three others this year and one at the tail end of 2024 as well. So this is our fifth in the series. And thank you so much for joining. Today we'll be focused on a project on improving and advancing commercial corridors in the city of Philadelphia, as you all know. Um, Part of what I like to do at the beginning here is just kind of ground us a little bit in why the Community Opportunity Alliance chose to advance a peer learning network on economic development. I think it's probably no I think a lot of people in the room would agree that economic development strategies build local wealth and stability over the long term. It's really important to the work of community development organizations, and whether it's through cooperative ownership, local entrepreneurship, small business strategies. These are really necessary to helping compel and encourage organizations to not only survive but thrive. So. We really wanted to highlight a few examples this year and give us all an opportunity to learn from each other. Would you mind going to the next slide, please? So just a little look at our agenda today. We're going to do some introductions. I'm going to share just a little bit of information that we have from our research at the Alliance that demonstrates what economic development means within the community development field. We'll do an icebreaker. We'll get to our stars of the afternoon from the Philadelphia Association of CDCs and some of their corridor managers and other participants in their program. I'll do a little Q&A with them and also encourage questions from you all. And then we're going to spend the last third or so of the meeting, if we can, in breakout rooms. And then we'll close it out. If we go to the next slide, please. But before we do all that, we want to know a little bit about what you're looking to learn today. So we will launch a poll for you, a really quick one, if you wouldn't mind filling out these three questions. That will help us a lot.
I had set up a bill pay, and it was supposed to happen on the night yesterday.
And Chance Kadesh, I'll maybe let you lead me a little bit as when we should cut this off.
Yeah, we give it a few more moments. We'll keep the poll open for folks who are coming in, but you can move on in a few moments. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I suppose I can move on while both folks fill it out. Okay. Wonderful. So as folks fill out the survey, Chance, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. I'm going to introduce a little bit for you how the Alliance thinks about economic development within the field of community development. So there are about 6,000 nonprofit community development organizations in the United States, with a lot of money going through them, a lot of employees. Economic development is a really core piece of the work of these organizations from coast to coast. What we have found at the Alliance is that within the broader field and even outside of our field, what we mean or what people mean when they say economic development can vary a little bit. But within the field of community development, we have found that there are 5 very common strategies among these 6,000 organizations. If you go to the next slide, please. The 5 strategies being training and career pathway programs, think workforce development, commercial development and financing, access to healthy foods and food sovereignty programs, leveraging assets from anchor institutions, things the eds and meds, universities, hospitals, and how communities partner with those types of institutions to advance opportunities within low and moderate income neighborhoods. And of course, support for local entrepreneurs or small business programs. And we've focused here in this peer learning series. We've covered some of these, not all quite yet, but we will. But all are fairly common, and by far the most common 5 strategies within the field. And just a little bit of information, if you go to the next slide, about each of these 5 categories. 37% of the field has some kind of workforce development program. Providing training and experiences on skills readiness and similar. If you go to the next slide. 26% of the 6,000 organizations develops or supports commercial facilities of some kind. Over the most recent 3-year period that we've analyzed, over 3,500 community and commercial facilities have been developed by the field. Next slide, please. 15% of the field states pretty explicitly that they work on advancing food-related programs. Next slide. The field supports, pushing 400,000 businesses, or at least over a 3-year period, the most recent 3-year period we analyzed. And for the average organization serves over 200 businesses, served over 200 businesses during that time. That can rate, it's an average, so it can have a pretty big range, but nevertheless, that's a lot. That's a lot of businesses to be serving, either through lending, technical assistance, or training in some regard. Next slide, please. So I just want to give you a little bit of introduction as to why the Community Opportunity Alliance wants to really focus on economic development strategies, and why it's really important to the field of organizations, and most importantly, why it's so important to the neighborhoods and communities that we serve. And sharing in our enthusiasm for those strategies and its importance is the program sponsor and supporter from Truist Bank, and Heidi Schoonover is here to help introduce today's PLN and give a few remarks. So Heidi, take it away.
All right. Good afternoon. Hope everybody is doing well. As Frank said, we have been working with the Alliance to make these peer learning opportunities available, and we're proud to continue that partnership. Quite honestly, at Truist, we recognize that these sessions are important connectors for our community partners working across the United States and across our communities. And it's important that we have platforms for our partners to be able to share knowledge, ask questions, really lean in order to transform our communities. And so, again, very proud to be a partner in this work. And I don't want to delay the presentation and the peer learning any longer. So, Frank, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you for your partnership too. We really appreciate it. So we're going to do a bit of an icebreaker question. If you can pull up the icebreaker question, that'd be great. Why are you here today? So I think we have still a small enough crew. If anyone wants to come off of mute and share a little bit about why you're here today, that would be welcome. Or just type something in the chat. I'm going to do the 8th grade math teacher strategy and be silent for about 30 seconds until we get a little participation.
Sure, I'll go. Hi, everybody. My name's Andrew Davis. I'm Senior Program Manager at Community Capital Fund. We're based out of Kansas City, in the Kansas City region. So we're based out of Kansas City, Missouri, but we work metro-wide. We actually we do grant intermediary work. And so a lot of funders, local governments work with us to get dollars out, particularly in low to moderate income areas. What motivated me to join was we just launched a new fund for the Kansas City area called the Rooted Change Fund that is centered on economic mobility. We're working with the Urban Land Institute. Some of you may be familiar with them, and also a local foundation as well that has funded the program. And so I'm interested in learning new strategies in ways that we're able to from peer cities on increasing economic mobility and coming up with ways to sustain the entrepreneurs, particularly local businesses throughout the area. Thank you.
Welcome. That's a great reason for joining. Welcome. Ms. Tecano Vasquez.
Hi, I'm Ari. I'm the founder and creative director of Viscera Studio. And we work with a lot of affordable housing developers and other community land trust sort of alternative folks to connect, not only the real estate development side, but the actual small business end. And we're usually building out spaces, but I'm finding there's often a gap of what we do after the fact to help sustain the businesses. So just interested to hear how other people have built it into, sustainable programs that hold their community up.
Wonderful. I can see Joanna taking notes. She's getting to that one, I'm sure. We can take one more if anyone else wants to.
Hey, good afternoon. My name is Marvin Lyman. I am the principal of Equitable Development Partners, and I lead the Develop Prospect initiative for the equitable implementation of the Prospectus Plan here in Kansas City, Missouri.
Wow, a lot of Kansas City presence. That's good. I see that. That's wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you for that. This is really helpful. It helps our presenters to help orient to the audience and what they might be looking for. So I really appreciate that. If you go to the next slide, I will introduce our main event here today. So part of what for those who are familiar with the Community Opportunity Alliance, our primary membership are state and regional CDC associations and sometimes affordable housing networks. But there are about 40 of them within our membership. And the relationship that those statewide and regional network organizations play with their members, local CDCs, CDFIs, and similar, the relationship that they play with each other within economic development work is truly unique, and there is a magic sauce there. And so what we like to do is put forward our member associations along with their members to talk about the programming that they provide, the impact they have, and again, a little bit of that magic sauce that we think makes these programs particularly impactful and scalable. So with that, I will toss it off to Joanna Winchester, the Director of Training and Technical Assistance for the Philadelphia Association of CDCs. Welcome, Joanna.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Frank. I am going to share my screen. Let's see. Here we go. Awesome. Great. I hope everyone's seeing that. Looks like it. Yep. Awesome. Great. So thank you so much for having us here today. I'm just such a fan of these gatherings where we get to kind of learn from what we're all doing across the country. It's so useful. So thank you so much to the Alliance for having us. And also thank you so much to Truist for supporting this and also for supporting a lot of the work that we're doing in Philly too. So thanks so much. I'm just really looking forward to nerding out with all of you about economic development strategies in neighborhoods. A lot of what we're going to talk about today is focused on how we can support the people who are supporting the businesses. But I will definitely keep in mind what you were all asking about in your intros too. So let's get into it. All right. So I think we just saw these pictures, but I just want to say again, I'm very happy to be joined today by Akeem Dixon from the Intersect and Monica Perea from Esperanza. Akeem is a coach in the program we'll be talking about today who's been with us for 5 years. And Monica is a recent alum, but that's how they relate to the program. But I'll let them introduce themselves to talk about who they are and who their organizations are. If you want to do that. Monica, you want to go first? Just do a quick intro.
Yeah, definitely. Hi, everyone. My name is Monica Parrilla. As Joanna said, I am part of Nueva Esperanza, and I'm a recent alum, but I've been in this position as economic corridor manager for about 1.5 years, but I'm also a business owner. So this is the tie that I have between it all.
And I am Akeem Dixon. I'm the founder of the Intersect. I worked for about 4 years as a commercial corridor manager But for the last 8 years, I've been a business owner who has worked to support small business owners and to develop commercial corridor. I've been a part of the revitalization of more than 10 commercial corridors in Philadelphia. I'm looking forward to speaking from a business owner perspective, a corridor manager perspective, and also to some of the concerns or questions that nonprofit leaders have, because I was one of those as well as the director of economic development. So I'm looking forward to being an asset to you all today.
Awesome. Thank you both. And just a little bit of background. So I came to PACDC actually from having worked in corridor management and economic development in a CDC. So it's really kind of cool to be able to be part of supporting other folks who are doing that work too. All right, and a little about PACDC. I won't spend too much time on this, but we are a membership organization for community development corporations in Philadelphia. We serve over 60 CDCs and 90 associate members across the city. And I'm just saying this to give a little context because I know we probably have some state level associations on the call. And while we are not probably as big as you geographically, I do think the number of CDCs Philadelphia has might be somewhat comparable to some states. So very excited to hear about, what you all are doing in your context as well. So in terms of our ecosystem for supporting small businesses and kind of building up the neighborhood economies in Philly, we have a really kind of robust and interconnected system, becoming more so these days too. I think, as we're all facing increasing challenges, we're becoming more cooperative, which is, a silver lining. But our ecosystem's made up of, like I just mentioned, a lot of CDCs in the city, a lot of neighborhood-based organizations that are partnering, as well as some business support providers like business development centers, affinity groups. We are lucky to have a really great range of diverse chambers of commerce here in Philadelphia that cooperate together and that support small businesses. There's also intermediaries like PACDC and Philadelphia LISC. We've got a variety of funders. Uniquely, we have the Merchants Fund in Philadelphia that actually makes grants directly to businesses as a foundation. And then government plays a role too. And within all of this, we look at corridor management as kind of a unique aspect of how Philly approaches economic development. It's really about building long-term and trust-based relationships with small businesses and other stakeholders in neighborhoods, with our neighborhood partners really acting as the connective tissue between available resources across the city and the community-based businesses that they work with every day. So for those of you who may have been scratching your heads about this, let's talk about the term commercial corridor. It's a little bit of a weird one. In some other areas, folks use that same term, but a lot of folks also call what we think of as a corridor as a main street or something like that. It's essentially that concentrated part of your neighborhood that has a wide range of businesses where everybody is going to get culturally relevant goods and services. People are gathering, socializing, shopping, worshiping. They're really, parts of our city that we see as very essential to community identity, and really, the economic engine for a lot of neighborhoods where folks are able to access groceries or convenience store items as they need. And so normally I would hop into telling you what a corridor manager is after that, but I actually prefer to have corridor managers tell their own stories and also to hear from the businesses. So I'm going to play a really short video that features Matthew George from the Germantown neighborhood in Philly. And he is actually also an onboarding program alum who's working with us as a coach this year. So I hope you guys enjoy this.
My name is Matthew George. I am the business development manager over at Germantown United CDC.
Being a corridor manager is important to me because I think as a business owner, it's hard to kind of look out for yourself sometimes. A lot of them have been stakeholders in our community for years. I want to protect those things.
Everybody knows me in Germantown. I met Matt just yapping out in the street because that's what I do. And Matt is a go-to guy. He's someone you can count on when you ask him. If he doesn't know the answer, he'll find the answer for you and get right back to you. He's always there when you need him. I think that's really important.
A part of my job to make sure that there's opportunities that business owners can take advantage of to better their situation. It's about building up the economy around where we live, also drive traffic towards our neighborhoods.
Never pictured myself as a business owner. Working here, I've gotten to know some of the customers on like a first name basis. So some people come in and I'm just like, hey, Miss Jackson, hey, Mr. Johnson. We always need more local business owners. And I think it'll be nice for a lot of people around here to see someone who looks like them in this type of position. What Matthew is doing is amazing. I definitely will be recommending him to some of my friends and family who are business owners.
Yeah, sometimes I'm the little brother, I'm the little son that is knocking on their door. I don't see them as a business. It's just Troy, it's Al. It's kind of my job to be that middleman for them. Got a lot of love for Germantown.
Awesome. So as you just saw, corridor managers are really critical connectors in Philadelphia. They're linking small businesses to the resources that are available and implementing a lot of place-based solutions. So I like to think about this role as kind of part business coach, part neighborhood planner, part real estate broker, part zoning expert, part event planner. It just kind of goes on and on. They wear a lot of hats. Really, the corridor managers here in Philly are just extremely talented, passionate, and resilient practitioners who are also facing a lot of challenges. A lot of those challenges are starting early in their tenure in their roles. And so that's why we're working on supporting corridor managers with an onboarding program. So they're often kind of expected to learn how to work with businesses and support them on the job. A lot of our member organizations as CDCs have limited capacity for this kind of targeted training around economic development. And often neighborhood economic development is just kind of one focus area among many that the organizations are handling. So for a lot of our members, that corridor manager role might be the only person on staff who's really doing economic development work. Some additional kind of challenges we're trying to address with this program is historically the pay levels have been a bit mismatched to the job expectations, and putting that together with the rapidly increasing community needs and limited support for organizations in the city, it's really unsurprising that the role has had a pretty high turnover rate. But the flip side of those challenges is an exciting opportunity, I think. One that our partners had been talking with us at PACDC for several years about leading up to the pandemic. And then COVID really underscored the importance of corridor managers. They were often really the only lifeline that existed between the city and the small businesses during the lockdown. So we were looking at, what are the resources out there for them? How can we support them? How can we kind of keep them feeling connected in their role? And so we started to think of corridor managers less as kind of individual separate entities in each of the neighborhoods and more as kind of a solid group across the city where they can connect with each other, share information. And that's really the role that PACDC is playing, is to kind of create that space to bring folks together, create that connection. And we've really seen, within their first year, if they've got that support, I think corridor managers can be real leaders in their organizations and their neighborhoods and connecting with other parts of the city and bringing creative ideas back, creating new collaborations. And so one other kind of important aspect I should mention about working on this program in Philly is that the corridor management work that happens in our city is largely funded through contracts directly with the Department of Commerce. So they're contracting with CDCs in different neighborhoods to do the corridor management work. And that really made them a strategic partner for us going into designing this program because they're literally invested in these folks' success. So we wanted to make sure that we were providing something that was getting towards that. And they're able to support that. And so with their support, as well as a lot of input from our members, some support from some additional funders. I know I shouted out Truist at the beginning. They were critical in helping us launch this. We started our commercial corridor manager onboarding program in the spring of 2021. And it was part of a broader corridor management initiative that we continue to run today. That includes a monthly working group and some other programming that's really designed to serve CDCs and small businesses. The onboarding program itself is an annual program. It takes 6 months. It's intensive training, a half day every month for folks coming in. It's designed for corridor managers in their first year on the job and helps to ground some of those fundamental concepts. But more importantly, create a network and connection through coaching and through their peer learning that they're doing. And then there's also some elements for helping the supervisors better understand the role and some trauma-informed training for them. So we look at this program as as a membership association that's kind of a step removed. I see Monica smiling. This is a photo from her cohort. We coordinate this program as kind of a service for our members and for our broader network. We see it as a tool for creating a baseline of kind of shared standards across the city and, being able to share proven strategies and build a stronger community of practice here. We also bring in our partners all the time as subject matter experts and coaches. So it's really a collaborative effort. And I heard you all talking about, what are the strategies and what are the areas of expertise that go into supporting these businesses. I saw a lot of those questions at the top of this call. So I am going to put into the chat. I have an overview of our curriculum. So I'm going to pop that in. Here it is. And then I also have, so these topics were selected from engaging our members, corridor managers, other strategic partners in identifying core competencies for this role. So that's kind of how we landed on this mix of topics for the program. So you guys can see both of those documents in the chat. And then we've learned a lot running this program for 5 years. At the beginning, we had conceived of it as kind of a boot camp type approach where we were doing it in 3 days back to back. That was a lot. And it didn't give a lot of time for applying learning in reality. So we expanded that to a 6-month-long program with half-day workshops and also added the one-on-one coaching over the full 6 months. So they're doing 10 sessions with their coach. They're doing corridor walkthroughs. Our biggest area of learning, I think, was around how to support supervisors and understanding that as much as we want to provide support and training for the corridor managers, if they're going back to organizations and dynamics with supervisors that are not, conducive, then all of that training is really for nothing at the end of the day. So we want to make sure that folks have support from all angles. And then what works in kind of equipping folks to work with small businesses. So it's really not an accident that the first 2 things on this list are people. A lot of what we work on throughout the curriculum in this particular program has to do with building trust and building relationships. But that's also true of being a corridor manager in general. And so, the relationships that they build within their cohort, the relationships they build with their coaches, that is all probably the most valuable part for them, I would say. And we'll hear from Monica in a bit. But yeah, I think, you can find information about economic development and small businesses using AI these days. But what you can't find is that connection with another practitioner who's going through the same challenge as you and who can collaborate and brainstorm. So we've seen those relationships really have paid dividends. We've seen businesses expanding to new locations and other corridors. We've seen folks getting promotions, ideas for programming that they've introduced, and yeah, a lot more. It's really great to see the ripples kind of spreading out from these interactions. But now I want to hand it over to Monica to talk a little bit about her experience as a participant coming into the program and as a corridor manager working with small businesses.
Hey, hi guys. Again, my name is Monica Parrilla, and I work here at Esperanza in Philadelphia, specifically North Philadelphia, Hunting Park area. I guess I should go in by answering the first question. Why did I choose to join? I think, like I mentioned before, and the same as Akeem, I am a business owner, and I've owned my own business since 2010. So I've been around really long, and I was able to grow it enough where now I can focus on my passion, which is helping other small businesses grow. And I think that being a corridor manager is the best way to service our community. So it becomes like a huge fabric of who we are and what we do. And Joanna and the PACDC has been so pivotal in that growth. What's the most valuable? There's a lot of things that are super valuable with the organization itself and how we connect as corridor managers. We have to believe in the vision of a small business owner, and we have to be so many things for them. We need to be sometimes their biggest advocator. We have to be their navigator when it comes to finding things within the city. In my case, I have to be their translator, right? Because the majority in North Philly are all Spanish speaking, and that's where I come in because I am bilingual. I have to be their bullhorn whenever, as a community, business community, something's popping off in our community. I have to be the one to grab the bullhorn and say, hey, we need help. Whether it be to other nonprofit organizations, whether it be to the city, or whether it be even up to a state level, I have to advocate for those, challenges that we kind of go through. The biggest one most recently being SNAP benefits for our bodegas. So it's a big, gigantic picture, and that's super valuable. What is the most challenging? I think the most challenging is learning how to jump through the hoops when it comes to like getting the resources. So for example, there are several grants here in Philadelphia. Some of them are federal, some of them are state, some of them are super local, through different nonprofits, but learning how to get through them. One of the roles that I didn't mention that we do play is sometimes I'm even an essay writer. There is a program called the Catalyst Fund where it's a grant, but in order for you to qualify for this grant, you need to write a business plan. And I think maybe some of you know small business owners. To me, what I service is micro businesses. So there's like 2 people running the store. We can't count on between these 2 people knowing how to write full-blown essays on what our mission statement is, what exactly you have to write into a business plan, projections. All of that stuff is things that a typical bodega owner, barbershop, beauty salon who sells hair products, some of that stuff they don't know. That's where we come in. So we have to be like the know-all for small businesses. And that's super challenging because everybody's different, but you have to believe in everybody's vision in order for this to work. How did I participate in the program? How did participating impact the work and grow your career? I think for me, I kind of knew already coming into this role, all the challenges and everything that everybody goes through. But the most important part with PACDC, for me anyway, was the networking part on, okay, these are the organizations and the resources. Here's the name and the email of the person you need to reach out to get things done. So having the access of saying, okay, well, before I would have to Google who to talk to. Now I have like the actual person's name and email, And one of the benefits of this program in particular was the speakers that come in are speakers for that specific resource. So you get a face to the name, you shake their hand, and you kind of say, this is who I am, this is who I service, help me. So I think that was the biggest thing that I took away from the actual onboarding program that I went through by Joanna.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Monica.
Mhm.
And so I'm going to turn it over to Akeem to talk a little bit about his coaching experience. And then we'll just wrap up by talking about funding because I do see some questions in the chat there.
Great. I will not take up. Can you guys hear me okay? Perfect. So I'm going to not take up too much time. I am going to drop my replies in the chat so that it'd be easier for folks to follow along, hopefully. So my process is really simple. I love coaching in this capacity because it's one of the few times I don't have to say a word. I just have to show up. I just have to say hi, ask a corridor manager, how's life? How's it going? And word vomit entails. I often think of myself as the cool uncle who is the bridge between a parent who is often right and has context and a staffer who is working in a smaller prism and doesn't have that larger understanding yet. So I prefer to focus on what that staffer or the corridor manager wants to focus on. And most importantly, like what's the noun that's giving them a hard time? The person, the place, or the thing? And always tying them back to the organization's goals, which to me is a fancy way of saying contract deliverables. And so we can start to talk in that language to a staffer who oftentimes this is their first time in the role, working with community, working within the structure, and often in having to deal with the challenges that comes with funders who are often well-meaning, but money means something to them that doesn't necessarily mean what the staffer thinks it does. And lastly, like let's make a plan with all those things so that we have something that guides us. I refer to it as a buoy in the ocean. It always brings us back home to a place that is rational and that is connected to individual goals, but also to the organization's goals. Why did I get involved? That is a very easy answer because corridors are my jam. It's how I started my career. It's where I spent the first part of my career. And over time, I've been a part of more than 10 commercial corridors changing on in some level in Philadelphia. And it's something that I'm really passionate about. So much so I named my company The Intersect because it was me being in the middle of a conversation between people, the business community, and the government, which oftentimes drives a lot of the work that we do on the commercial corridor. Everyone's perspective is different on the corridor. Everyone's agenda and what they view the corridor as and what it could be is different, what also incites me. And institutional knowledge is the like playing field leveler, in my opinion, for resources. You know, what people have been through in the past that was not successful, as well as what has been successful, is something that oftentimes gets a project to completion or at least started. And, you know, I don't have many places where I can take 10 plus years of experience as a corridor manager on the street, but also as a leader in the building, managing a corridor manager. There's not many places I can take that info and do something with it. And this coaching program is that. And the more I travel, you get to see how being in a living place that is very walkable is a luxury. And it's something that depending on the condition of your neighborhood at that moment doesn't always feel like it. But as the neighborhood changes over time, you know, you start to see that that's why people are driven to certain neighborhoods because they do give them an opportunity to have a very convenient lifestyle. And lastly, I don't want you, your organization, or your staffers to step in any of the potholes or landmines that I have at the beginning of my career when I was really excited about seeing commercial corridors change. Here are some of my favorite coaching topics that come up, and they mirrored what I would often see in our staff meetings. Like, hey, you know, have you seen the budget for that? And who's paying for that? And who's going to maintain that? And sorry, not sorry, no one knows what a corridor manager is. So when they walk in, they're not probably going to throw rose petals at your feet until you explain to them what a corridor manager is and what it can do. And also, it doesn't work that way. You know, as you can see, the trend normally is, in my experience, reeling in a very enthusiastic and very passionate and very hopeful staffer, not to kill their dreams, but to figure out how their visions can be actually put to good use and can be aligned with the contracts and the mission of the organization that they are working for. And lastly, like, you know, simply put, that's a great idea, but how does that fit, or how can we make that fit with an agenda that's going on inside of your organization? It's been a very valuable experience to go through because of the access that you get to see businesses grow, and you get to see communities grow, and you get to see staffers grow as well and take on other prominent roles within their organizations. And so many of the skills that they learned as a commercial corridor manager is able to be applied in various skills and roles throughout the organization. And watching the neighborhoods change, you know, even though the neighborhoods change and the communities change, it's been nice to see the commitment that organizations and cities and funders have for corridors not wavering at all. If anything, it's become stronger. And unfortunately, there are challenges, like with all things that have value. And some of the biggest challenges that I face is helping a corridor manager work internally to figure out what the short, medium, and long-term goal of the organization is. Oftentimes, the expectation is that the journey is over once funding has been established to get this person a job as a corridor manager. And oftentimes that journey is just starting and is ever evolving because of funding opportunities or projects or developments in that community itself. And lastly, just the lack of pay. You know, I've been very happy to see so many corridor managers move on to other amazing roles, oftentimes within city government or at other nonprofit organizations that work to support or fund corridor work. It would be nice to see that amazing talent, you know, stay in place. So they continue to revitalize their neighborhoods and see the fruits of their labor come to fruition. And lastly, my favorite question is, thankfully, I've never ever had to deal with that. And I would I would like to say I have never dealt with a challenge from a supervisor because I'm the cool uncle, I'm not the parent. And I don't have all the answers, but I do stress that I have like years of experience, lots of empathy for all parties who are involved, because the one thing we have in common is that we want to see these neighborhoods be thriving assets for communities. And I have two ears that made me a very good thought partner. But I encourage, you know, corridor walks. I encourage meeting the supervisor because I spent years in that role, right? So I never want to be the parachute person who comes in and thinks they have all the answers because I have one side of the story. Quite frankly, you know, I don't have this problem because most of my time I am speaking from a director's perspective, thankfully, and I'm able to give the corridor manager a perspective that they don't have because of either time in at the organization, a relationship they have with their supervisor, or just not feeling like they're in a safe space to have a honest conversation about certain things. So I get to be the bearer of bad news to them and tell them that you have a great idea, but it might not happen the way you wanted to, as fast as you wanted to, because of these reasons. And it often comes off nicer from me than it would be their immediate supervisor. And so typically the supervisor and I never have any problems because I get to be the bearer of bad news for them in many cases.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, both of you. That's super helpful. And I know Frank has some questions and we want to get time for discussion. So I'm only going to mention our funding and then I'll put the rest of the slides into the chat and you can check them out as you would like. But I do want to point out this program has a price tag of about $95,000 a year. 75 of that is covered by our Department of Commerce. And then the remainder comes from banks and other partners. The largest expenses that we have in running the program is, I'm sure you can all guess, staff time. And then also, we want to make sure that we are paying our coaches that are involved in the program, because as you just heard, they're bringing a lot of really great professional expertise. And it also sends a message externally that the work people are doing with businesses and with CDCs is professional, high level, and it deserves to be compensated. So I will stop there and hand it back over to Frank. But if you want to check out the slides, I just put them in there along with the sample annual budget. There is a little bit of info towards the end of the slides about, like, if you wanted to replicate this, what are some steps you could follow? And also, what are some of like the impacts, like the numerical impacts that we've seen in terms of businesses served? But let me stop sharing. Sorry, Frank, I know we ran over a little bit.
All right. Thank you, Joanna, Akeem, Monica, thank you. Charles has their hand raised. Would you want to come off mute, Charles?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for this presentation, really good information. Just a quick question to help me contextualize what you all are sharing. From the way you describe it, it sounds like most or all of these commercial corridor managers and their efforts are embedded within larger CDCs. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yep, that's what it looks like in Philly most of the time.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe I'll have some thoughts about that in the breakout groups, but that's a helpful point of clarity. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
And did the two people who I saw two questions in the chat basically about the money. Did both those questions get answered by what Joanna shared? If not, feel free to come off mute, but silence, I will assume, means it was answered.
Curious if you had more info on like how your members are getting funding for those corridor managers, like their full-time position. Because as you mentioned, they're providing so much value, but so underpaid for their work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest source is the Department of Commerce. They have a program called the Targeted Corridor Management Program, where they contract with the CDCs to have a full-time position doing this work. And I think I want to say there's a little over 20 that have a full contract like that, and probably closer to 40 that are actually running corridor management programs. So additional funding is also coming from sources like NeighborWorks or foundations or bank CRA investments are supporting this work too. So hopefully that's helpful.
Wonderful. Okay, let's try to get to breakout rooms if we can. We have some sample questions, which I think we'll put in the chat. But let's see if we can get into our breakout rooms. Is that Chance? I think if you're here, you're going to be shipped off to a breakout room with a half dozen or so other folks, and we'll have about 10 minutes.
Great. Yep, and I'm going to do that right now for everyone. All righty.
Great. Do we have everyone back? Well, any questions we can take maybe one or two questions for Joanna and the folks from Philadelphia.
I think Julie had a very good question about the budget for the corridor manager itself, not for necessarily the program, the corridor manager coaching program. Could you speak at all about for Julie that dynamic around paying and the budgets for that?
Kind of get a sense of the overall program. If we were to implement it or try to influence our city to implement a similar program, what would that be looking like overall?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I think the first part of it is the base salary and benefits for the corridor manager. And the folks that we've seen be more successful are, paying at least kind of like a middle management level, not an entry level. That's where you start seeing a lot more turnover. because this is definitely not an entry level job, even though people are sometimes hiring it that way. So that's where I would start. Also making sure folks have benefits. And then there's also like little things that people wouldn't necessarily think of originally. So we encourage organizations with corridor managers to have like a petty cash fund for the corridor manager to spend at businesses. Because if you're patronizing a business, you're naturally going to have a better in for a relationship. And, you know, a lot of organizations don't necessarily think about that or give the corridor manager kind of like a funny look if they start doing something like that. But we've seen it be really successful. Monica, do you want to add something? Because you're at an organization. Are there elements in your budget that you would recommend folks think about?
Yeah, I think to kind of piggyback off of, this is definitely not an entry level position. One of the things that I was saying in the breakout room was that most recently I had to turn into an accountant / finance director for one of my businesses because we have a new, there was a city issue going on with the state, and we had an exemption for something called the BERT tax. And now we need to educate ourselves on how we take this back to the small businesses and say, hey, you guys now have to pay into a tax that y'all never paid in before. I have to explain that, right? And how do you explain to a business you have to pay more taxes? So we do a lot more than just help businesses. We are literally the facilitator to how to run your business. So it's kind of like going to, you know, college finance 101, and I had to give this to the small business. So it's, if you want to hold on to a corridor manager, you definitely want to invest in them. It's not an entry level position.
Interesting. Our group got a little bit into, and so it's the top of the hour. So if you have to go, please. I'm still into the conversation, so I'm gonna stick around. And Joanna, please stick around, I guess, and Monica, if you can, and Akeem. But our group had a question about, I think, is Marvin still here? Marvin is here.
I'm here.
Could you summarize what your question was, Marvin? I'm glad you're still here.
Sure. So we have a corridor called the Prospect Corridor. We have a plan for that corridor that it's a very comprehensive plan that calls for economic development, real estate development, and meeting the needs of the area as well as the city. Is there such plan for the corridor there in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so it varies by neighborhood. Each of the neighborhoods typically will do a neighborhood planning process that will include the corridor, although some neighborhoods will do a very targeted corridor plan like what you're describing. So it really, and to the person who had the question about funding earlier, that's also a huge part of funding this work is, you know, the time and money it goes into creating a strategy. So yeah, I think Akeem talked to that a little bit too, in terms of like supporting the corridor manager. Yeah. And like aligning with the plan, right?
Yeah. Plan brings money. Money brings more resources for the corridor manager. And it's also something that can hold everybody accountable as opposed to I have an idea. And so the worst thing about a corridor is you have X amount of business owners, and then you have the adjacent community owners, and then you have your city council person who drives down it on the way to work, and then you have your own agenda, and then so I just named like 400 people with a plan. And so if you have a written down plan and like everybody, you get to point at it. And I always look at it like a grocery list. Is that anything else that's not on my grocery list is probably something that's bad for me. And that guides everything and makes life substantially easier for everybody to be held accountable.
And Joanna, can I ask, so in our group, we got a little bit into my rough recollection from what you have described in the past was that this program used to be much more run by the city. And before it went over to PACDC and somehow, but can you describe the pluses and minuses maybe of what it was like when it was with the city, how it's better? I assume it's a lot better with PACDC, or at least a little bit better, but some of the pluses and minuses to the PACDC's role in this relative to what it used to be.
Sure. Yeah. And I think actually what you might be recalling is corridor management itself. So the city, they still have by council district, each council district has like a services manager that works with the corridor manager to connect to city agencies and resources. but before the targeted corridor management program was created to fund CDCs to be doing the work in neighborhoods, the city was expecting those folks to be in the neighborhood serving the businesses as well. And it just was not realistic, and they weren't able to build the same kind of relationships. You know, having somebody who's in the neighborhood full time really builds trust with the businesses rather than having someone who is directly attached to city government, which we're seeing a lot less trust there, especially with everything going on with the government and ICE and all of that. So there's that strike against them. Plus, they're trying to cover this huge amount of geography, a whole council district instead of just a neighborhood. So that, I think that's been really game changing for the city to have folks who are located in the neighborhoods. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question fully. But.
Just want to jump in real quick, Joanna, to that too. There's a cultural aspect in our neighborhood actually that is related to that too. So I think the connector before how it used to be, which was city government coming in, having someone local that knows the neighborhood really well and building that trust, it's super important. Because like you said, Joanna, when L&I, which is license and inspection, come out to make sure you have your health certificates, as soon as they see it, businesses want to close their door like, no, you're not coming in here. And we want to break that barrier. We're here to help you, not to burden you.
Great point. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Monica, Akeem, Joanna, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. We really appreciate it. You all are going to get a survey on your way out the door. We appreciate your participation. And yes, thank you again. We'll conclude.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.